Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And the Ukraine is certainly the overarching theme here. And do you have any news on that in terms of as it relates to our situation?
Well, I mean, what's going on in the Ukraine is absolutely horrific. We have been working to actually get a hold of some folks on the ground, and we will be bringing you some interviews with folks from the Ukraine in the coming weeks.
Fantastic. That'll be truly awesome and basically indicative of the evolution of the evolution of Carnivore Radio and the media complex that it is a part of. Now, speaking of the Ukraine, no good tragedy or crisis goes unutilized. Many in the Liberal Democratic Party are now using the Ukrainian crisis to push the Green New Deal, as well as electric vehicles with Mayor Pete.
Yeah, I mean, this just shows how tone deaf they are. The Green New Deal is dead. Joe Manchin has already said we need to drill. So they don't have the votes, but they keep beating a dead horse. Meanwhile, Democrats in Alaska and Texas have come out and stated, look, we've got enough oil and gas right here to fix this problem. Not only can we replace the Russian gas that we were buying, we can ship this to Europe and get them off gas. And this is the Democrats in these states saying this.
Oh, no, this is a huge change. It was Manchin, kind of leading the charge from West Virginia. You're talking months ago with the Green New Deal or Build Back Better, whatever the hell you want to call it. You see so many fissions in the Democratic Party, and we talked about this, and you mentioned this, you're talking about mainstream Democrats who I think are just throwing in the towel. I mean, this is the epitome of incompetency. It's like driving your car down the highway and you have it on cruise control and there's an accident and you just are talking to your wife and your friends in the car and just continue to put it on cruise control. Biden has he's not in charge, but whoever is covering for him has no ability to turn on the dime. It doesn't mean you abandon green energy. It means you're in a friggin' crisis. You need to do things differently. Am I not correct?
Absolutely. And, again, the Democrats have been saying we need to start drilling again, especially those in oil-rich states who are saying basically we have more than enough to get us until green energy is ready.
Let me interject. You're a business person, and this really bothers me, Dr. Lopkin. Any strategist, anyone who knows anything about planning, I'm not against green energy. I think it's got to happen. But you evolve into it. You have a plan. We're going to drill. We're going to be energy independent. And then we're going to have things like the Manhattan Project. We're going to incentivize businesses to come up with green technologies. Am I missing anything?
No, you're not. And speaking of businessmen, Elon Musk came out. Now, let's face it, Elon Musk has been pushing for electric cars harder than anybody else. He's manufacturing them. He came out and said, we need to drill oil and natural gas. We do not have the infrastructure for solar panels and electric cars yet. We need to drill. This is the man who is basing his fortune on the idea that we can get electric cars out here. And he's telling Biden we need to drill for oil and gas.
But what's wrong with this picture? When you and I know this is the president of the United States and the vice president, Camilla, and their amazing team, Mayor Pete and others. I mean, this is not rocket science. It's not like some kind of harebrained idea or something way out there that only the smartest person in the world could solve. I mean, you talk about a basic college student, if you gave them a strategic plan to write in this crisis, could do this. Am I not correct? I mean, it boggles the mind.
You are correct. And again, yesterday Biden made a speech saying we're getting off of Russian oil. We're not going to be buying from them anymore. And then he spewed so many lies in his speech. It was absolutely amazing. But the biggest lie he keeps saying is, well, he has no control over how much the price of gas is. Well, we checked into some numbers, and this was actually reported by KTLA in California. For every gallon of gas sold in California, 18 cents goes to federal taxes, 51 cents goes to state taxes, 10 cents goes to sales tax, 22 cents goes to the state's low carbon program. Another 15 cents goes to fight greenhouse gases. Another 2 cents goes for underground tank storage. This is all taxes. So,
there's no question.
And he's claiming, oh, well, he has no ability to change this. If he cut those taxes, it would drop the price of oil, the price of oil by almost 18%. Then, if he actually got rid of the regulations that he put on, that would drop it even further. And we'd be talking about effects that would take place in months, not years, like green energy is going to take.
Oh yeah, no. To say that's like you have terminal cancer, and they're ready for surgery, and you say, well, I don't know, maybe I'll wait for the actual cure in 5 years. That's pretty much what they're talking about. The thing is so crazy. It's such ineptitude that it leads to something that came out in Politico, which is hardly a right-wing rag or organization, and that only 25% of those polled believe that Joe Biden is fit for office. That's shocking.
Yeah,
in the middle of a crisis.
It is absolutely terrifying.
And in the middle of a crisis, when we were talking about when we were prepping for this show, is that George W., who ended up as a very low-rated, failed president, had like 90% approval during 9/11. Okay, I know you can't make a direct comparison, but presidents in crisis usually rise in the polls. They're not plummeting, and they're not. I've never heard of a president that only 25, they might hate the guy, fine, but I've never heard of a situation where only 25% of those polled by a very reputable organization believe he's fit for office. Not good or bad, but fit. You can have someone who is a crappy manager. Yeah, he sucks and she sucks maybe as a manager, but no one's going to say they're not fit to be, to be in business or something. I mean, that's a new level, Dr. Lotkin.
It really is. And I think a big part of it is the fact that the administration as a whole keeps using the phrase, we were taken by surprise. They were taken by surprise by the Taliban in Afghanistan. They were taken by surprise by inflation. They were taken by surprise by Omicron. They were taken by surprise by Putin. They were taken by surprise by rising gas prices. It is absolutely inconceivable that these guys should be that clueless as to what's going on.
Actually, they were surprised about Christmas.
Yeah.
They weren't quite sure it was in December.
They're surprised when the sun comes up every morning.
It's really scary, and to add to the horror. Too bad it's not Halloween, because it would be appropriate. Kamala, in the middle of the crisis, in the middle of this crisis, not like 4 months ago or sometime in the future, basically took this time of all the things going on and only as she can do said, it's almost like the great visionary. Imagine a world with electric buses. I wake up every morning, Dr. Lotkin, and I contemplate what I'm going to do for the day, and I imagine a world with electric buses. I mean, everyone's talk about being out of touch. Everyone's thinking, living paycheck to paycheck, $200 for a fill up. Of course, they're just imagining a world with electric buses, aren't they?
Oh, of course. I mean, they also, both she and Pete Buttigieg made comments that, oh, well, if you're worried about the price of gas, go out and buy an electric car.
Mm-hmm.
People are worried about being able to buy enough food every week. The vast majority of America does not have a spare $60,000 to buy an electric car.
I have to interject something because that is a really good point. Because I was talking to a couple friends of mine, and they're successful people, so they have more than the average income. And they're like, people are increasingly, to use their term, are going to get pissed on how out of touch this crap is. No one has, and first of all, you have a situation now. One of the people I was talking to just got laid off, very successful person, because companies, I think that's the next thing that's going to be happening is there's going to be increasingly more layoffs. But anyway, you're worried about your finances, you're worried about your job with the supply chain, inflation, all of the above, and you're just going to say, dear, I think it's time we did our part for America and plopped down 50 grand for a Prius. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
The idea is absolutely ridiculous. And what's even more is I do not understand their focus where they think the green energy is. Because Kamala Harris was talking about electric buses. Now, first of all, to fuel these electric buses, you have to plug them in, and that electricity is being generated by oil and natural gas. So
and coal, by the way, and coal.
Yes, and coal. But now here in Connecticut, in several areas, one of which is the Yale campus. And by the way, experts from both Yale and MIT have been banging the drum that we need more nuclear power. The administration has not addressed that at all. But at several places here in Connecticut, the Yale campus among them, they have buses that run on biofuel. This is literally leftover frying oil from restaurants that restaurants have to dump. Well, why are you not focusing there? You can actually take the existing bus fleet, convert them to this for a lot less money than buying a brand new electric bus. And it's also clean energy, but that they're not looking at. So they've basically focused on they want solar, wind, and electric cars. They're not looking at anything else, and that's going to be their downfall.
But that's the whole thing is they're not, they claim they're the party of science. Okay. And I just claim that I'm a Major League Baseball player. Okay. It's about equal. Okay. First of all, you plug a car, because Camilla, I'm sure she doesn't have the bandwidth to understand this. It just doesn't come from like the atmosphere as we just talked about, right? It's plugged into the grid. Our grid in America is not really all that clean, okay? A lot of it is coal. And guess why a lot of it is coal? Because the liberals 40 years ago were gung-ho on new nukes, or no nukes, I should say. Yeah.
Well, and actually, though, actually, I'm going to correct you on one thing. Even with the percentage of coal we use, the oil and natural gas that is mined here in America is actually the cleanest on the planet. So when they go begging Venezuela and Iran and United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Russia for more oil, that oil is actually causing more pollution and more climate change gases than what we are drilling here in the U.S.
Agreed, but doesn't that beg the question? Isn't it really about an agenda? If they were really looking at the science, again, they're the party of science. That your point is 100% correct. And I'll talk about natural gas. America has a shitload, excuse my language. I think it's enough to last like over 100 years of natural gas. Extremely clean. It just I'm perplexed because this whole thing makes no sense. If you said, okay, well, could you convert some percentage of cars to natural gas? You maybe old buses or what, but it seems like there's no real forethought in any of this.
No, because the radical left has no idea how things work. They have blinders on, so they can't accept that they're wrong. I mean, let's face it, with the price of gas going up, AOC was complaining not long ago she couldn't afford to repay her student loan.
Oh,
Well,
God.
guess what? All of these people now that can't afford their student loans, they now also can't afford gas, can't afford food. Somehow the student loan is not that important.
Well, actually, speaking of student loans, I really truly believe basically to prevent them from being sued for malpractice, BU should forgive AOC's loan in economics. No, seriously.
I think
you got to just forgive the loan. We screwed up on this one. The professors were drunk. They probably were on acid. I have no idea, but it didn't work out, and you're free and clear, AOC, because you know shit about economics.
Yeah, more than forgiving her loan, they need to rescind her her degree. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, the irony is, imagine if they had in front of the School of Economics had a statue of AOC. That would just be, you couldn't make it up. I haven't smoked pot in years, and I think I would make an exception just to go to the unveiling. I might have a heart attack. I'd be laughing so hard. You did mention about begging Venezuela and Iran are two good buddies. That's Carter-esque. And that's Carter-esque on steroids, okay? It's pathetic. But speaking of pathetic,
no, but
Kamala,
you know what?
Go ahead.
Saying it's Carter, I don't even think Jimmy Carter would have done that. I mean, we don't even recognize the leader of Venezuela as the rightful government. So how are we asking them for help? And then Iran, now there's a possibility that the Iran deal, this could be a good thing, isn't going to go through because Russia is demanding that the Iran deal be tied to sanctions to Russia over the Ukraine. So hopefully that's going to fall apart. But it's absolutely inconceivable that an American president would turn to states sponsoring terrorists and cartels and offer to give them money,
saying we need a little help. You had a great, depression. I know there's, war clouds in the future. Could you help us build some planes? And this whole thing is so hard to follow, Dr. Lopkin.
Actually, it's more along the lines of saying to Nazi Germany, you know what? We've got an overpopulation problem. Can you help us out?
Exactly. Yeah. Can you assist? It's totally unbelievable. And speaking of the unbelievable, and I don't know why they do it. You can help me and help our listeners out with this one. They're sending the Mensa candidate, Kamala, to Poland to help rectify the situation. And last time she was overseas, she talked about how Russia's big. Now, just give me a second, because this is not something easily to digest. Russia's big and Ukraine is small. That was her big contribution. But she's going to Poland. That'll work out well, Dr. Lopkin, correct?
Oh, that's going to go over like a lead balloon. As she's going over there, now Poland had the great idea to give the Ukraine MiG fighter jets so they can help defend their homeland. And America is going, well, if you want to do that, you can do that. But, the original plan, they were going to fly them to Ramstein, and then the Americans were going to give them to the Ukraine. It's absolutely amazing. I keep hearing so-called experts going, well, we can't give planes to the Ukraine. We can't do a no-fly zone or anything like that because that would bring us into direct conflict with Russia. Does anybody really think Russia's not aware that the Stinger missiles dropping their planes out of the air were supplied by the United States?
No, but they didn't get that pissed though about when Camilla sent the electric buses. No, they were really that kind of calmed them a little bit because they had the Stingers. Yeah. They were shooting them up left and right, but then they were like, Putin said, "Yeah, I can imagine a world with electric buses," and he kind of chilled out a little bit. That was so Camilla did something well.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But I mean, so Poland right now is aggravated at the U.S. because we don't have our act together to get these planes to Ukraine. So what are we doing? We're sending that great diplomat, Kamala Harris. Oh, yeah, let's see how well this goes.
I'm sure it'll be fantastic. And I agree. Let me be completely clear. Your point is the point. Because not sending planes makes so Putin's going to differentiate from Stinger missiles, what we did in Afghanistan back in the 80s, that almost pretty much won the conflict. So Stingers are okay. Does it help me out with this? Stingers are okay. Anti-tank weapons are okay, but you can't send fighters.
Right.
What's wrong with that logic?
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I don't quite see that.
Well, this is, I think, what we should start referring to as Biden logic.
Yeah, I like that.
It has no bearing in the real world, but in Biden's twisted little head, that makes sense.
Well, I actually think it does make sense because you brought it up a lot earlier in this podcast. When you can't expect something from the unexpected. And if you've never worked in the real world for a day in your life like Biden and Camilla, you don't, and Mayor Pete, how can you expect that they know that? They've never worried about filling up their tank with gas. They've never worried about getting laid off when Biden said, "Oh, just get another job from the Keys." Yeah, you just get another $100,000. There are thousands of them out there. So, yes, it doesn't surprise me a bit. Does it surprise you, Dr. Lopkin?
No, it really doesn't. And I mean, what actually did surprise me was the sheer amount of stupidity coming out of liberal Hollywood. Because you would think at some point these folks might actually remember having to struggle between jobs and make ends meet. But both George Takei and Stephen Colbert have, over the last few days, come out and gone, oh, so what if gas goes up a couple of dollars? It's worth it. Sure, when you're a multimillionaire, you don't worry about a couple of dollars at the pump.
Well, his audience, Colbert had a good little niche when he was in the Comedy Central with Jon Stewart. It was funny. I thought it was actually funny. He put all his chips, just like CNN, on Trump. His comedic ability is that about close. I don't get, not quite as good as My Cat Nancy. It's unwatchable. How does that sound? He's awful.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
There you go. Yeah, so you could have the Carl and Nancy, my two cats, on prime time, and people would at least think they were cute, so the ratings might actually be higher. Now, speaking of ratings, in closing, CNN, there's a change of leadership. Let's just call it. There's a monumental change coming, and I think many people at CNN the people that we so revere for their genius and political insights will probably be no longer with us. Maybe before May or after, when the actual technological or technically the change happens. But essentially, as a pre-shot, they've declared a truce with Fox, because essentially over the last five years, it's been Trump, Fox, and I think that's about it. Your comments?
Pretty much, yeah. They finally realized that every time they took shots at Fox, Fox's ratings went up. So they're not doing themselves any favors by doing this. And they just announced that the CNN streaming app, CNN Plus, will be coming out with a price tag of $2.99 a month. And I don't know, they can't get people to watch CNN for free, but they think people are going to pay $2.99 a month for it. So now they've actually got to figure out, well, if we're charging them, we've actually got to put something on that people want to see. And that's not the current CNN the current CNN lineup.
Yeah, it's like, it's like paying $2.99 for the greatest hits of Kevorkian. I mean, please, you're killing me. So I think that's something that's going to be unfolding, and it's quite interesting to think that my big takeaway of the whole situation is that we're in very precarious times because we have leadership that has zero experience, zero, okay, and has no clue. Your final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, Biden has shown himself to be completely incapable of being president. And this really, again, we've talked about this, it shouldn't come as a surprise. Al Qaeda had plans to assassinate Obama simply because they knew Biden couldn't take over and it would make their lives easier. I find it absolutely hysterical every time I see the clip from the campaign where Biden is claiming that Putin knows him and Putin doesn't want him to be president. Actually, Putin couldn't wait for him to be president.
Actually, I'll dovetail on that. Putin opened up a nice 100-year-old vodka and partied like a rock star. He was doing dances around the Kremlin. How does that sound? He couldn't believe his luck that he got Dumb and Dumber in there.
I think that's pretty accurate. We couldn't have handed things over to Putin any easier than we did. And the Chinese. And of course, now the Chinese, who have an alliance with Russia, are now standing back going, oh, we might have backed the wrong horse. We thought this was going to be over in a week. And Russia's not doing that well.
No, they're not, because they don't have the commitment.
We'll see what happens with that alliance. Personally, I think that alliance is actually the best thing that could have happened to America, because if China keeps trying to funnel money into Russia and keep propping them up, that's going to hurt them. So let's cut Russia off at the knees, let China keep trying to prop them up, put sanctions on China, take out both of them in one fell swoop economically.
Okay, and let us close with this. And the percentage of that actually happening, the probability of Kamala/Biden is what I would say less than 1%.
Yeah, I don't think they.
If you had a real president, fine,
if we had a real president, 1,000%. It would have been done already. Yeah.
Hello. Well, Dr. Lopkin, great show. I have to say one thing. For every, every dark cloud in someone's life, or in this case, the country's life, there is a lot of. You can always look at the good side, and you have to agree with Biden/Camilla. There is a lot of humor. You couldn't make it up if you were a sketch writer for Johnny Carson.
Yeah, no,
There's no way.
you couldn't make this up. And you know what? Quite frankly, if you made this into a movie, nobody would believe it was possible.
Oh no, if this was like 1990 and you had Mr. B and Mrs. C, Biden and Camilla, people would walk out and what Siskel and Ebert would say, this is the dumbest movie ever. This is so stupid. Whoever did this had no idea what they were. And you know something? You know, truth is stranger than fiction, isn't it?
It really is.
Well, Dr. Lopkin, great show, and we'll look forward to next week. And people can access us in many venues. Correct.
You can find every episode of Carnivore Radio at xvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin, and thank our listeners.
We'll see you next time.